Welcome to another edition of the Northport Newsbreak. I'm Jason Bartolone, and I am joined by Alaina Ray, our Development Services Director, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the ULDC, what it is, why it's so important, and why the city is updating it. So, Alaina, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So let's start off with it, Alaina. What exactly is the ULDC that we keep hearing about?
Sure, thanks. Well, the ULDC is the city's Unified Land Development Code. And what that means is that it contains all of our zoning regulations as well as all of the regulations that a development would have to comply with as far as traffic, parking, landscaping, tree protection, all of those types of things. So it's an incredibly important document because every new development that comes in is going to have to ensure that they comply with all of those regulations. The reason why it's so important to update it is because it hasn't been updated since 2010. And the city has grown a tremendous amount since then. And without updating our ordinances, we are unable to keep pace with the growth that we have and ensure that the growth coming in not only is compatible with the existing growth, but that we're able to plan for the next 20 to 40 years.
And we know how fast Northport is growing, so obviously this is really important. I know it's a very long, very detailed process that your team is going through to update the ULDC. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, how it's going so far, and what's been involved in that process?
Sure. Well, the planning staff started this process in 2015. So here we are 9 years later, and we still don't have a new ULDC. I came on board with the city 2 years ago and brought in new staff, almost entirely a new planning division. And we started working on this, and we have made a lot of progress. We are almost at the finish line. We have just a few months left. And we have really built this new ULDC around best planning practices for growing cities and smart growth tactics. We are incorporating a lot of environmental protections that we don't currently have. As we all witnessed during Ian, we have some significant flooding issues, and there are a lot of community concerns about preservation of our environment and our natural resources, and we are really incorporating a lot of provisions into this new code that will address those concerns.
I know another important aspect of the update is to address the amount of commercial properties that we have in the city versus residential. As we know, maybe you can tell us a little more about the history of Northport, how we were originally envisioned as a residential community, and why it's important that with this process we add to our commercial zoning in the city.
Sure. Well, General Development Corp is the company that originally platted Northport. What I mean by that is they bought the land and they subdivided it into quarter-acre lots. GDC was not interested in what it takes to develop a sustainable city for the long term. They were interested in how many lots they could sell. That was their sole purpose, was to sell as many lots as possible and then get out. And that's what they did. And it went down in flames for general development. But what we're left with now is acres and acres and acres, hundreds of acres, thousands of acres of platted lots that were intended to be sold off to individual property owners, and then General Development Corp would wash their hands of it and they'd be gone, and they really didn't care what happened to the city in the long term. Well, cities need a certain amount of balance in their tax base. Otherwise, the improvements that are needed for roads and sewer and police and fire and everything else that we rely on becomes the sole burden of single-family homeowners, and it really is too much for them to bear. In order for a city to be fiscally sustainable for the long term, you really want to have as close to 30% non-residential, so commercial, industrial tax base as possible. We're sitting at somewhere between 8 and 11%. So we are very far down on the scale as to where we need to be. And a lot of people think, well, if we have more commercial, our taxes will go down. Not necessarily. What it really means is that your taxes won't go up as much as they would at some point if we didn't have that commercial. So it's very important for us to build in as much commercial and industrial as we can, not only for the tax base, to ensure that we don't end up in the future having to increase our taxes on our single family residents to the point where they can't survive anymore here. But also, we have an enormous number of people that commute outside of this city every day to go to work. Something like 90% of our workforce leaves the city.
Right.
So they're going somewhere else for jobs. Those jobs are creating tax base for another city or another county that's not us. Those people are utilizing businesses for lunch and shopping and everything else while they're outside of our city limits. And we're losing all of that revenue. So the other thing that it does is the more people who have to commute outside the city, the more stress it puts on 41 and I-75. So everybody that sits in traffic on I-75 every day, a lot of it is because people are having to commute outside of our borders to get to and from work. So it helps all of those things, helps our small businesses have places to move into when they're outgrowing their current space, whether that's a home business or another small business somewhere else. So there are a lot of benefits, but for the long-term sustainability of the city, it really is critical that we get a higher amount of commercial.
You mentioned flooding a little bit earlier, and how will this actually help flooding? Or we've heard from some people, maybe this will make flooding worse with this amount of development. Can you address that?
Sure. Well, flooding always tends to get blamed on new development. And in some cases, that's true. The single-family homes on pre-platted lots that we have here in Northport do contribute to flooding. These homes, new homes that are built, they have to be built higher because of FEMA requirements, so a lot of fill is brought in. And because these lots are pre-platted, they do not have to provide any stormwater protections other than the water runs to the street. And a lot of people don't realize, but General Development Corp platted it out and designed the city so that their stormwater was handled through canals and the street. The streets were designed to flood. So obviously that's a problem in a lot of places because the houses are built up, and when it floods, they're on a little island and you can't go anywhere because the streets are flooded. General Development Corp actually designed it that way.
Wow.
Yes. So when a master planned community comes in, or a commercial development or industrial development or a multifamily, they're not allowed to just build up their site and let their water run off to their neighboring properties. They have to build a master stormwater plan. So they have to contain, by law, they have to contain their stormwater on their site. That's why they build retention ponds, they build underground catchments, and they also have to slope their properties so that it doesn't just run off to the neighboring properties. So it actually, when you build like that and you have to build those stormwater plans, you can actually improve the flooding around you because that water is being held on site rather than just running off.
One of the other questions we hear a lot from people is, with this rezoning, with this ULDC update, what is that going to mean for my property, whether it's a vacant single-family lot or if they do have a home? If you rezone, what's going to happen? Can I sell my home in the future? So how is it going to affect those people?
Sure. That's definitely a concern that people have, and it's perfectly understandable. That's why we want to get this message out. If you have a single-family house in an area that is going to be rezoned or is proposed to be rezoned, you can still live there. You can sell your home, and somebody else can live there. If you have a fire or if we have another hurricane, which we really don't want, but if your home is damaged or destroyed, you can rebuild it as a single-family home. So it's not taking away any of the ability for you to enjoy your home for the rest of your life if you want to, or for you to sell it for someone else to enjoy for the rest of their lives. We wanted to make certain that we write protections into this ULDC to ensure that people can still enjoy their homes. For vacant lots, there are going to be some places where single-family homes will not be allowed. Those properties, we will start to see a transition on those, and I can give an example as to how some of that transition has happened. Up in the northeastern part of the city, in the Yorkshire area, north of 75, that area was all platted out for single-family lots many years ago, and it was rezoned back in 2007 to Activity Center, and no single-family homes have been allowed to be built in that area since then. But what has happened is developers have come in and purchased up those lots. We have one developer out there who has purchased up 300 acres of lots, and their intention is to develop a large corporate park. So those are the types of things that we will start to see in some of those transitional areas that are currently undeveloped. It will be a little different in areas where we already have single-family homes and those areas are being rezoned. We're building in compatibility standards and transition standards to ensure that any new businesses coming in areas that are being rezoned, for instance, to mixed use, will be compatible with existing development. A lot of people think, well, if I live in an area where I have a single-family home, that means that a gas station is going to come in next to me. And that's not the case. In order for anybody to develop anything under the code, they're going to have to accumulate some lots. And they're going to have enough space to put in their parking, their landscaping, their buffers, their stormwater, as we mentioned. So it's going to require more land, and that's going to take. These are gradual processes. Every growing city goes through them. It takes time. It takes decades for these things to come to fruition. But we are building in those compatibility and transition standards to ensure that we protect our current homeowners.
So what is next for you and your team in this process, and what are the next steps coming up?
So we are working on the final couple of chapters of the ULDC, and we're also working on changes to our comprehensive plan and our city codes that have to go along with that. So we will be bringing the final chapters to the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board and the City Commission over the next 2 to 3 months, and then we'll go through the adoption process, and that involves a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board, as well as 2 public hearings in front of the City Commission. The public is invited to all of those meetings. They can speak at those meetings. They can provide comment online or by phone or in person. And the City Commission and the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board will be able to hear their comments. Once that happens, we will be working with our community and ensuring that we get the word out. We will be talking with all of the builders, developers. Most of the people who read a ULDC are professional engineers or architects, planners. So we will be getting that word out. We've actually already, let them know. A lot of them are waiting for the ULDC rewrite, and they know it's coming, and so they're watching the progress as well.
So I know it's not a lot of light reading necessarily, but there's a lot of information on the website. I understand NorthPortFL.gov/zoning. We've got a lot of resources there, FAQs, right, for people to learn more?
We do, and we're working right now to update that. It's been a process that has consumed a lot of our time, and so we had not been able to update the website as fast as we wanted to. But we do have somebody working on updating that and getting all of that information online, and hopefully it will help answer a lot of the questions that the public has.
Well, you've answered a lot too, so thank you for your time, Alaina Ray, Development Services Director. Go to NorthPortFL.gov/zoning for a lot more information, and stay tuned for more as we continue the ULDC process. Again, this is the Northport Newsbreak. Thanks for listening.